Hi there. Well, it's been a great week for President Trump and for all of us. But there's something I need to talk about. Now, I never said I wasn't a work in progress, and I do have a problem here. And that is, I can't sugarcoat this. I can't get over the fact that the Democrats in Congress, virtually every single one of them, voted to impeach the president that I love, I voted for, that you all love, and you all voted for. So this, this feels personal to me, especially to the Senate Democrats, after being forced to listen. I mean, they couldn't say I didn't know this. They were forced to listen to hours and hours of testimony from the crazy-eyed rantings of Adam Schiff and the so-called House managers. I mean, nothing that they said made any sense. It was just, he's a bad man, things are gonna happen. Versus the careful, solid, and polite, they were so polite, legal arguments of President Trump's legal team. Oh my God. I've been thinking about this. I know I need to get a life. Don't hate, question my thoughts. These are all things I've done in the past, and I know I'll get to that eventually. So one of the things I've been thinking of is, if I feel this way, then probably there's others out there that feel this way. I mean, we simply cannot vote for this Democratic Party. We just cannot. Nobody. I don't care how fine that individual is. You cannot vote for them because they have to stick together, apparently. I mean, they all voted in the Senate. I mean, have their IQs all gone down? I don't know what to make of it. Are they that blinded? But having said that, it's been a great week. I mean, first, that State of the Union, it was amazing. I listened to it twice, and I just thought, taking the policies and then showing the individuals, personalizing, what a show. What a show. And I mean, I had tears in my eyes. I was so moved by so much of it. And I thought, okay, the political junkie part of me looked and thought, this is really bad optics for the Democrats. Very bad. I mean, we can talk about Nancy Pelosi. That was really bad. But just looking at all the Democrats sitting there glum-faced, he's talking about lowest black unemployment, lowest Hispanic unemployment, lowest unemployment of disabled people, and just giving the statistics and seeing their glum faces. I mean, that is really bad optics. And it occurred to me that little AOC, whose views I don't like at all, I think she was smart not to be there. You know, she's supposed to attend, but there's some places there's no way you can win. And obviously Congress has to attend, at least the bulk of them, but they did not look good. And I think she was smart that there are no pictures of her looking angry and glum-faced when these statistics are reeled out. And of course, then, you know, the acquittal, which wasn't so great for me because of the Democratic. I think I made the mistake of, I don't know, maybe I hope Dianne Feinstein would vote again. But I also see that if you're in that party, and you buck it, you are toast in your own party in the same way that Mitt Romney is toast to most Republicans now. I mean, what a weasel. Oh my God. And I'll mention something about that later. But here's one of the things that struck me as I was listening to news clips, is because I think you have to really be careful. You don't have to, obviously. I have to be careful, and I urge you to be careful. Because if you listen to commentators, they will focus on certain things so that really are out of context, even the ones that support Trump. Like I think it was Geraldo Rivera was saying, you know, both Pelosi and Trump, they have to just get out of this battle thing. Like, that's all. The implication was, if you didn't watch anything else, that's all that President Trump was talking about. But I enjoy listening to his so-called acquittal speech that he gave the day after acquittal, where he was thanking all the people in Congress that helped him, and he focused very little on that. I mean, he did say it was totally unfair, just like the Mueller investigation was unfair, but it really was so skillfully done as a politician, thanking the people there. And for those of you that watched it, I'm sure you were equally impressed. Some people mentioned to me that it was very clear the way he thanked his family for sticking through all this difficulty. I mean, it was just a tour de force. His speeches are a tour de force. I've been around a lot of politicians in my day, and I've just never seen anything like him. I mean, and it's not just his ability to connect with the crowd, to be entertaining. That's really great. But it's also what he does in terms of policy. I've almost never seen that. Like, for example, he gave this speech. This was another one in North Carolina, about opportunity zones. And I carefully listened to that. Another tour de force. I mean, if people, you really, not you, but if the American public could see our president unfiltered, and in today's world, you have to do that. You have to do it in an unfiltered way if you are going to make your own judgment about someone. But here's just a minor tidbit, but he does this all the time. He was talking about, you know, we all heard that he gave more money or made sure that the historically black colleges got more money. What I didn't realize is he pointed out during that speech that every year they'd have to come begging to Congress for funding. And that required them to hire consultants, lobbyists, and it was very hard to make plans. You know, because if you're just going to get a year's funding, you constantly are spending a lot of time and effort just to keep that funding going. And President Trump looked at that and said, that's crazy. Why do they have to hire all these people? Let's give them multi-year funding. I mean, something very simple, but huge. And President Trump does this all the time. These are all these under-the-radar things that he does that most people never hear about. They hear about the big things, you know, the unemployment numbers down, our economy doing great, the stock market, polls, how people feel. We hear that, but we don't hear about this good governance, really good governance. And of course, on another topic, that's got me thinking about who should our next president be? Who should run in 2024? Because I'm beginning to think a politician is not a good presidential candidate. But then you really have to also understand how Washington works. But somebody that really, there's probably no other Trump out there. But we are learning from Trump. We are definitely learning from Trump. We Republicans are learning how to fight back. So one of the things that I've thought about too is when you read someone's opinion or you watch a news show. By the way, One American News, I get that through DirecTV, and I think you can get it online. If you just have time and you just want to know what's going on in the world, I mean, really know what's going on in the world, and from a kind of pro-Trump perspective, like what's Mike Pompeo doing internationally, an excellent 1 hour news summary, you can get it almost every hour from One American News. So I record it throughout the day, and sometimes I just go to that. And you will hear things you won't hear elsewhere, but it's very helpful. So if you're in a time crunch, that's a good one. But let me talk about Fox News, because not, as other people have pointed out, and thank you for that, I mean, it's very clear that Fox News seems to be moving in with Roger Ailes gone and the newer men, they seem to be moving more in the middle. I mean, they have their popular shows, their really popular shows, they're big money makers, so they're not going to get rid of them. But let me just tell you my opinion on some of them. I always like Greg Gutfeld, although he just repeats often what Scott Adams says, and since I don't listen to Scott Adams anymore, at least I can know what Scott Adams is saying. But he does it in a humorous, fun way, and he's a strong Trump supporter, so I always like that. And Dana Perino's starting to grow on me a little bit. She's getting better. But one of the things I always watch is Tucker Carlson. He brings up different things, and he's definitely pro-Trump. He's anti-war. But he points out things that sometimes other people don't point out, and I like that. Sean Hannity's okay. There's something about his, I mean, I definitely like that he's so pro-Trump, and I really like what he's doing, and I'm glad his show is popular. There's something about his voice, it's kind of a monotone, so he's not my first go-to. But here's one I really like, is Laura Ingraham. I love her Ingraham angle that she starts out with. Every once in a while she has guests on that I just have to fast forward through. But I always make sure I listen to, because a lot of times throughout the day I'll think, why isn't nobody else pointing this out? Something politically. And then she'll say it. So maybe I like her because she thinks a lot the way I do. And then in the morning I listen to Stuart Barney. I quit listening to Neil Cavuto. He just had guests on. He's trying to be fair or whatever. I don't listen to Brett Baer, Martha McCallum. I mean, these people, it's just like, no, like for example, I heard Brett Baer and Harrison Faulkner. I don't always watch her show, the Outnumbered thing. But he just said something, and it was kind of negative toward Trump. And she said, yes, but what about da-da-da-da? I mean, he kind of had to back down. I like that she stuck up for Trump, for our president. Sometimes Lou Dobbs, I mean, he's definitely, I like that but Maria Bartiromo, she's great. So Sunday Morning Futures, I always listen to that. I don't always catch her during the week because of the time zone difference, but she's always good and always has good guests. And I know Trish Regan is good, but it just doesn't come out. So I listen to a lot of these, and but I cannot, I cannot tolerate Chris Wallace. I mean, I cannot stand that guy. And Juan Williams has a good heart, but there's nothing original that he says. So, I don't know, we probably all have our preferences, but it's definitely a mixed bag with Fox News these days. But better than the alternative. And that kind of gets me to a whole nother thing about the media. I've thought a lot about this because the media in general, as we all know, is leftist. Hollywood is leftist. Movies are leftist. And if you don't watch movies with a discerning eye, without realizing it, you can absorb messages. I call it junk, as I've mentioned before. You have to be very careful about junk food for your brain, junk food for your mind. In other words, do you really want to take in this message? Because it will affect you. It will start to shape your thinking. But if you are aware of it, you can still enjoy the movie without letting it affect you. So, for example, dances. I was just watching the old movie again, Dances with Wolves, which was a great movie. But the whole message is, look at this really wonderful Native American tribe and really awful Americans, I guess. I mean, it's just been this movie after movie after movie. The worst one, oh my God, Avatar. Everybody loved that movie. And the first time I watched it, I thought, what about that movie? I just watched it on television, but what is it about that movie? It didn't really appeal to me. I like technology and just having all this nature stuff with no technology just kind of didn't appeal to me. But then I watched it again, and it was so incredible how anti-human it was. Let me repeat that. Anti-human. I mean, look at the protagonist. He actually gave up his humanity. He gave up being a human so he could be this other creature. And of course, corporations. Oh, in all the movies, corporations are bad. Technology is bad, like flying around on those birds in Avatar. That was really cool, okay? Now, yes, they had a strong woman in it, but she only had power because she was the daughter of the rulers. Everything was nature. There's no improvement. There's no advancement. And they even make the military look good. Like, it was really horrible. I mean, what's with James Cameron that he would do a movie like that? I ran into him once outside the Athenaeum. I didn't really run into him. I was going to one of my Chair's Council dinners, and he was with some JPL, Jet Propulsion Lab thing. And so we were all kind of talking, with the cocktails and stuff. And so at one point, just the two of us were talking, and there were a few people around. And I thought, should I ask him about that? And I thought, nah. But he was talking about his boat, and, he was having it was just a nice conversation, but I'm thinking, I couldn't see anything. Why would he be so anti-human? Where did that come from? That it would weave itself into the storyline like that. I don't get it. But if you're not paying attention, it can affect you. Just wanted to point that. And it was kind of like when I was visiting my niece. So we were watching all these kids programs, kids movies, all the animated movies. And she, bless her heart, is, evangelical Christian and raising her children, she and her husband. And I just pointed out, notice there's no mention of God or anything related to people's religion in this movie. I don't even know if she thought about that. Maybe she did, but the kids hadn't. So I said, I'm trying to teach them, think about these things. Think about what you're hearing. Because these messages are relentless. And it does affect you. And so much of it, and so now you have some of these kids coming out of colleges, they're very anti-American. Not the rest of us, but they are. And they don't understand how great this country is. So, speaking of that, I've been thinking I'm going to delete my Netflix account because I don't like what Netflix is doing in terms of all of their movies and programs just seem to have this anti-something theme. I'm not really sure how to explain it. But you know what's really good? Amazon Prime. I really like Amazon Prime. So Mike Abels, hi Mike, had suggested in one of his comments that I look at the movie Revealing Ukraine. And I thought, oh, it's Oliver Stone. I don't really like Oliver Stone, the conspiracy guy. But this was a very interesting movie. And I've seen other conservative 1-hour shows, if you will, or 2-hour shows on, you can find those on Amazon Prime. I mean, documentaries that are quite good. Dinesh D'Souza, I saw his documentary on there. I caught a lot of them. And I like to get a lot of historical ones. So I was listening to one on Confucius, and that was interesting. That was an interesting documentary. And then because I did something on China, then One Child Nation came up. And I thought it was going to be about the demographics of what happened in China when they mandated, or pretty much mandated, one child. But oh my God, it was awful. What happened to people? It was, and the show, the documentary, was done by a young woman. I don't know how young she is, but sort of young compared to me. A young woman who had grown up as one child. Actually, she had a brother because they lived in a rural area, and 5 years later, they could have a boy. But when they described what they did to implement that policy, it was horrific, horrific. The only word I could think of is soul killing. Because they would take what it did to the people who implemented it, the forced sterilizations, and as bad as the forced sterilizations were, the forced abortions were the worst because women were trying to get away. And they usually did the abortions really 8 or 9 months into pregnancy. And the people who have participated talked about it with just like an air of resignation. What could they do? And so the aborted babies were like babies. It was really, and like one woman, I just thought, what did they do to her? Because at first she didn't want to do it, but she was getting all these awards and stuff to be part of this team. I mean, she kind of said, yeah, there's this one woman, she's like really pregnant, and she was trying to run away. And she was naked because all her clothes were off, and she's trying to run away. And she goes, well, it was really hard because we couldn't really grab her. There was nothing to grab. And of course they did, and then they killed the baby. I mean, what does that do to people? And then when they had all those adoptions, and then of course when were girls, they would, if you had a girl, because since you only could have one child, a lot of them would just leave the baby to die in the market. They'd sometimes put some money, hoping somebody would pick it up, but the baby would just die from exposure after 2 days. But what was so horrific, too, I mean, what was done to the people is, it's like we have to do everything we can to make sure we maintain our freedoms and that we never give the government that much power. I mean, talk about a Second Amendment right. What they did was horrible. And this is China. Boy, Doesn't make me think too well of China, for sure. And that's kind of segueing a little bit. The only thing that to me is particularly interesting about the coronavirus is the fact that we don't really know what's going on in China, because after watching that One Child Nation and seeing what it was like in China and what they would do, I mean, I don't even know what they're doing to the people there. So I'll mention something about the coronavirus. A long time ago I read about the great Influenza by John Barry et al., and that was very interesting. But I'm listening to another book right now about the flu. And keep in mind that the flu kills 36 to 50,000 people each year here in the US. That's a lot of people. What was kind of interesting about the influenza pandemic of 1918 and 1919, there were 675,000 deaths in the US. But the treatments they gave people were horrible. So many people died of the treatments. They just had no idea. So this latest book is quite interesting, just about flu itself. So I kind of think of the coronavirus as, one of the things I was paying attention to is how many people actually die of it. Because it's the lethality of it that would concern me more than anything else. Because flu is out there and flu kills. So this is another form of flu. And I want to know how many people die. So far I feel pretty good. And I also like what we're doing. The CDC, I like that we're quarantining people, that we're doing everything that we can. I don't know that much about China and what China is doing, but one of the things I would recommend is, because if you watch the headlines, it keeps coming up, and we tend to think about what headlines we see. We think about if it's at the top of our head. So don't be afraid of it. I think our government is taking good steps. I feel good with President Trump and the CDC and everything, what they're doing. I wait and see, but I'm not as concerned. So I think that's it for today. I will never ever vote for a Democrat again. And I think that's something we should all think about. This is war, people. This is war. They're trying to take away our freedoms. I'm not apologizing for supporting this president anymore. I mean, not that I ever did, but I'm really not apologizing. There are people who think, oh, he's so horrible. It makes them not smart. I don't want to say dumb, but it makes them not smart. They really can't see. How can we not see? And we have to see for ourselves. Talk to you next week. Bye.